Let's begin. Okay, we are up to Zayin Amud Aleph 7a1, final Mishnah and Gemara of the first Perek. Says the Mishnah as follows: Mish nigmar dino barach. I don't know how these courts used to work, that you could have a guy, they're like, execute him, and the guy just like sloughs. I don't know how this happens. In my mind, it's a little bit wild to think that. But as I mentioned a little while ago, I thought that was crazy until I saw a video of a guy after the ruling gets ruled. The guy bangs down the gavel, and the guy leapfrogs and tackles the judge over the judge's bench. So if that could happen with the bailiff and with the police officers, I guess you could run away in the Beit Din. Let's say they already ruled on the case and he runs away. He comes in front of that same Beit Din, right? That he ran away from. En sotrin et dino.
Double jeopardy.
Right? We don't say, oh, the guy came back in. Let's look at the case again. You don't get an appeal because you ran away. Okay? We continue from where we left off. The Nigmar Din, the final ruling on the case is as if it's frozen. The fact that you ran away doesn't change anything. We just come back. We have to understand, what did the Gemara think? Why would we have thought that you should get a new trial because you ran away?
Can he testify again? Can he say, I did it before and only pay and
sentenced.
not pay?
No, he was sentenced already. Sentenced already. Yeah.
Why would he
Our case that we discussed is where the guy runs to another Beit Din and tries to admit. Right. At least there's something to think about, because maybe no. But the answer is no as well over there. But here he's coming back to the same place. Okay, now let's go to a second law. Now, obviously, I'm sure you guys you're already Gemaras learners, so your brains are cooking. You're trying to figure out, why would we think that that's the case? Could you imagine? I just want to test the waters. Could you imagine what the chidush of the Mishnah might be?
New evidence was brought.
What if the guy runs away, and now he comes back? Why did he run away? Because he knows that there were other witnesses that saw something else. Now the other witnesses come in, he brings them in, he's like, I'm back now. But could you listen to these two witnesses? If we say that we don't reconsider, if we say that we don't open the trial again, then we're not prepared to listen to these two witnesses. So maybe the chidush is not assuming nothing changed, we carry on with the ruling. What we're saying is that the case is closed. Maybe that would be the chidush. You see, so every time you see the Mishnah saying something outlandish, your first thought should be, well, what might the Mishnah be talking about? Okay. Anytime you have two people stand up and they say, we're bearing witness that this guy, that his court case was finished in the Beit Din of Chamashe HaShuel in Brooklyn. Okay? They pick a Beit Din, they tell you where they saw the case be closed. Okay? Beit Din Shel Ploni. Uploni Edav. And you know who the witnesses were? The witnesses were Reuven and Shimon. Okay? Hareze Yehareg. This guy, what do we do with him? We kill him. Remember, this second Beit Din has had no trial. Right? What are we saying?
They're sentencing him. They're sending him to death.
Two people walk into a Beit Din, dragging a third guy. And they say, guys, citizen's arrest. This guy, he's a runner. He already was in Beit Din. They already ruled on him that he should be executed. The witnesses that saw the crime is Reuven and Shimon. What does the second Beit Din do? They don't reconsider the trial. They're ruling on something that the Edim are saying.
But Reuven
and what are the Edim saying? Not we saw a death or a murder. We saw a court case. They're, in a certain sense, assuming that they're lying, they just circumnavigated the whole court proceeding process.
Not really.
Yeah, of
They're
course.
giving full faith and credit to the judgment that was already entered.
If that
If it
judgment
existed. So again, watch this. Me, you, Harry, and Jonah want to put Ray to death. Simple. What do we got to go through trial for? You two walk in with Ray, and you say, this guy killed somebody, went to Beit Din, Nigmar Dino, they decided to execute him. You know who the witnesses were? Shlomo and Jonah. We just make sure that we don't go to reserve cut that night. So no one can see us. And what happens? The next Beit Din now, they're not cross-examining the murder. You see the point? Okay.
Do they ask all Oh, which bed din?
So remember, in a scenario where you could ask which bet din and verify it, it would be easy to do so, right? What if they're telling you that they were in a bet din in some other country, right? Back in the time of the Mishnah, they would believe them. There was no way to verify it. Okay? They would believe them and the person would be killed. Now, it sounds like, wow, what a chidush. But in truth, it's no more a chidush than when two people walk into court, go through the entire trial proceedings, and you're believing them about the crime. The point here is that the Torah believes two people, when they say something happened, it establishes in the eyes of the court that that thing is the truth.
Do they have to bring the original witnesses?
No. Right? It does not say that they do. Okay? Uploni edav, it just says, and they are. Okay? That's all it says. Now, says the Gemara, says the Mishnah, we talked about an idea earlier on. Someone asked the last class, one class ago. That's true about a Sanhedrin, that they speak in all the languages. But is that the case for every Beit Din? And we explained, Sanhedrin noheget ba'aretz u'b'chutz la'aretz. You could have a Sanhedrin in Eretz Israel, and you could have a Sanhedrin in Chutz la'aretz. But in order to do that, what do you need? In order to judge this capital case, the laws of life and death, you need to have a Sanhedrin. And the Sanhedrin needs to be made up of minimal 23 people. How many people are in the Sanhedrin in the Lishkat HaGazit? The great Sanhedrin in the Beit HaMikdash? 71. Okay?
71.
Yes, excellent. Sorry, what?
Whoever said that heard us on the.
He said 70, 72, 71.
I feel like I'm in Sotheby's. Do I hear 73? Okay. Says the Mishnah, Sanhedrin hahoreget echad b'shavua. If you have a Sanhedrin that kills once in 7 years, we've quoted this many times, nekret chovlanit. They're called a group of people that are chovel. I don't know why they translate it over here in the art scroll as a destroyer. Chovel doesn't mean to destroy. In fact, Rambam writes the laws of chovel umazik. Chovel means when you wound someone, when you hurt someone, right? Chavala, right? I don't know why they translated it as a destroyer. Okay, but either way, they're a damaging bet din. They're a bet din which is abusive, let's say.
7 years, not 7 years.
Rabbi Eliezer Omer. Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah says, Echad l'shiv'im shana. Not once in 7 years, once in 70 years. Rabbi Tarfon, Rabbi Akiva Omrim, Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva was Rabbi Tarfon's student. Ilu hayinu b'Sanhedrin. If we would have been in a Sanhedrin, lo neherag adam me'olam. There never would have been a case, ever, in our Bet Din, where someone would have been murdered. Why? Because we would have set up situations where it would be impossible to be able to convict the person. Now we have to understand what Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Tarfon, what was their aim? What was the purpose of doing that? If the Torah gives a death penalty, the purpose is not to be able to create scenarios where it's impossible to ever, fulfill it. Right? So what are they actually saying? All right? Says the Gemara, says the Mishnah, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer, Af hen marbim shofche damim b'Yisrael. Right? Yes, I hear what you say, Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Tarfon, but bottom line, you would have actually caused a proliferation of murderers in Am Yisrael. You would have enabled more criminals to feel like they could get away with it. Unfortunately, it's what we're witnessing today, that when there's a weak criminal justice system, who benefits? Not just criminals, but crime. Crime skyrockets, okay? So Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel is saying, I hear you, I'm not disputing that you could have created these scenarios where you would have, like, as an example, I'll give you an example. Let's say they tell their witnesses, they ask the first witness in isolation, which way was his hair brushed, right or left? Guy thinks right. They ask the other guy, or left. When on the laces on the murderer's shoes, were they single or double knotted? They would ask so many questions that eventually there would come a point where they would contradict one another, and eventually the testimony would have been rendered invalid. Now again, it's very hard to understand because Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel does not ask what I believe is the pertinent question. What's the pertinent question? Why are you being smarter than God? That's the question you have to
Why are
answer.
you trying to be intellectually disingenuous?
The Torah says that this is the punishment if someone. Now, okay, you want to cross-examine. You're supposed to do that, right? The pasuk says that you cross-examine v'darashu v'chalkru, and they found out and they checked and they double-checked. Great, but to say that I'm going to come up with a technique which will allow every person to get off. What are they? Is
not a
this
defense,
the left-leaning liberals? What are they doing? It's very strange. And Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, who argues with them, doesn't even argue with them from the perspective of what are you trying to do. He just casually observing that might cause more people to be emboldened to do crime.
But isn't this discussion a bit silly?
Explain.
Because you're talking about a Sanhedrin or whomever, a court, that's killing one person every 7 or 70 years.
Yeah.
So, by Ramban Gamliel saying that, it's not really relevant.
But isn't Rabbi Tarfon like the Trump card?
Hold on. Let's just review.
Only one person died.
There's no halacha that says that a bet din should kill once in 7 years. There's no halacha that says that a bet din should kill once in 70 years. The bet din could kill every week. And you know what the bet din would do if there were cases in front of it that they ruled if it was killing every week, it would still kill every week. That would be their obligation.
But this implies that they didn't do that often.
Correct. And it would not happen. Why? Because the Torah's level, and this is something which I think needs to be understood, and then you understand where Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Tarfon are coming from. The Torah has the most supreme places, the most supreme value on human life. And for human being to take a life, to take part of a life, to take 1 minute of life, it's important to know. Bar Minan, none of you should ever need to know. But there's an organization called Chaim Arukim, which means long life. What do they exist for? Chaim Arukim exists for one purpose. In the pinch, when the doctor walks in and says, there's nothing left, we want to unplug him, who do you call? The guy's kidney is failing, he's going to have this, we could maybe keep him alive, but maybe he'll have limited brain function, maybe not. We don't want to give him, we don't want to feed him, we don't want to give him the drugs, what's the halakha? It's very complicated, and if you do it wrong, you're a murderer. That's the hard part here. So a lot of times you have people who feel like they have their own personal, I'm not going to call a rabbi, we're just going to talk about it as a family. You can't talk about it as a family. Families are not educated enough. By the way, oftentimes, rabbis are not educated enough to make this decision. You know why? Because what's required here is not just an intricate understanding of the Torah law, but also of exactly what's happening with the medications, what's happening with the body. What does this statistical analysis look like in this case with regards to a failure of a liver, of a kidney, of a whatever? We have someone in this group who actually had to call recently. They asked me to call, and I said, I can't answer this phone call. I can't answer it for you. Let's get on the line. I immediately called. The line is managed by Rabbi Raymond Beda. There's two rabbis on it. Dr. Madelon is part of the team. They consult with each other. Sometimes I called one of the rabbis. The rabbi told me, I can't answer it. You have to call this one. You have to call the doctor. So it's very important to understand the Torah's value of a human being interfering with another human being's life, even for 1 minute, is of such importance that we always will shy away from doing that. The chidush that the Torah gave us is that when everything stacks up exactly, there are cases when you do what's it called? You'll carry out the death penalty. But unless every bit of that is fulfilled, the Torah never intended for you to be able to do the death penalty. The Torah gave us something which is incredibly rare. Now, I thought to myself, come on. Well, once every 7 years? And then I realized there's lots of mitzvot in the Torah that are only relevant once every 7 years. Shemitah, Eved Ivri, right? Etc. Once every 70 years? Yeah, there are mitzvot. Yovel is every 50 years. Some certain mitzvot could be even longer than that, right? 28 years, right? Sorry? Yovel is after 7 cycles of Shemitah, the 50th year is Yovel. That means that there's a mitzvah the average lifespan in the Middle Ages was between 35 and 45 years. Did you know that? That's why they were getting married so young. Okay? So you lived 35, 45 years. Something was going to kill you. Anti-Semites, typhus, bubonic plague, pick your choice. Not COVID, but lots of other things. Okay? So what happened? You could have a guy born in year 1. He never saw Yovel in his life. You get it?
Yeah.
And the likelihood of you seeing Yovel more than once in your life, obviously depends on the luck.
1 in 70 is 3 generations.
Sorry?
1 in 70 years is 3 generations.
Now understand, if that's the case, that the rarity of something doesn't preclude it being included in the Torah, then we understand. The Torah could have intended to have this almost impossibly high barometer. It could be such a thing. But I was like, come on, even Yovel is 50 years. And then I realized that I have 2 answers to this question. Who knows the 2 answers?
People weren't committing murder because they weren't.
No, you're thinking in the wrong lane of thinking. Where else do you have an example in the Torah of something that the Torah bothers to go into it, even though it's rarely excellent. Ben Sorero Moreh, first one. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says, the mitzvah of Ben Sorero Moreh, how many times did it occur? Never.
Once, maybe.
Other rabbi disagrees.
What is that mitzvah?
The wayward son, the son that they kill at the age of, before his bar mitzvah, because he's going to turn into a raging homicidal maniac. So you kill him before he does it. Would you mind asking him not to do the floor here until we finish the class? Thank you. All right? So this mitzvah is a mitzvah, according to one opinion, never happened. The other opinion argues, no, never happened. I remember it happened one time. So either one time or none times. The Gemara continues with a second mitzvah that one opinion says happened no times. What is it?
Sotah.
Nope. Ir Hanidachat. The city that worships Avodah Zarah altogether. And the whole city gets destroyed. Okay? In that case of Ir Hanidachat, the Gemara says, happened 0 times. And other rabbi says, what are you talking about? I stood on the heap of, after it was burned. So again, a scenario that you have a mitzvah in the Torah with many pisukim, with many laws attached to it, that never took place, or took place once. So once I realized that actually, we're maybe looking at this whole thing a little bit incorrectly. We're looking at Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Tarfon as these crazy liberals who are trying to get everybody off the hook. The answer is no. From the beginning of the Mishnah, you see that if we call the Beit Din a chovlanit, or if we call the Beit Din, once in 70 years, a destructive Beit Din, right? If that's what we're calling them, the Torah's intention was never that this should happen all the time. And I think also, by the way, when you look at the language in the Torah, you know what the Torah says when someone gets a death penalty? V'chol ha'am. We talked about this. V'chol ha'am yishme'u v'yirau. And all the people will hear and be terrified. That's not something that happens on Monday and Thursday.
Yeah.
That's something that is so rare that it got carried out. Yeah. The second bit that I want to say is that even if that's the case, it still doesn't preclude us from carrying it out. And I gave as a proof which Beit Din was a Beit Din Chovlanit, the very first Beit Din that ever existed. Moshe Rabbeinu's Beit Din killed the Mikoshesh Etzim, and they killed the Mikalel et Hashem. So the very first Beit Din killed. No, see, that's different. This is the bit I'm trying to differentiate. We are not saying that you're getting away with it. No one gets away with anything. God is going to get his retribution. Now, if the earth opens its mouth and swallows him up, that's Hashem. Yeah. If the miraglim they die in the desert for their sin, that's Hakadosh Baruch Hu deciding that that's what. There's a plague happening, with Aaron HaKohen after the story of Korach. That's not the Beit Din. Where do they rule on the halakha and carry out the law? Mikoshesh Etzim, the Mikalel et Hashem. Those are examples. Okay?
Via secular serif.
You know what? You know what's interesting? One example that I thought was a little bit different is the aftermath of the Egel. When Moshe Rabbeinu tells all of Shevet Levi, grab your swords, everyone go out, and give the punishment for Avodah Zarah. And they go out and they execute it. And they execute them. Right? All of that happens there, right? Is that Beit Din?
No.
So what was that? What was that ruling of Moshe? Where'd that come from? How did he know to do that? How did he know? Huh?
Maybe Hashem.
We'd have to assume that. I'm just saying, here's a perfect example of something that's carried out by people, not by God. But still, we don't see that Moshe Rabbeinu sat down, had a case, ruled each one. You know, it's different. You also find it again. When do you find it again? In the story of Baal Peor, where the same exact thing happens to the ones that were nitzmadim el Baal Peor in the story of after Balak and Bilam with Cosbi and Zimri. Okay, so now we start understanding Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Tarfon. Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Tarfon say, if the Torah has these impossible hoops to jump, then who are we to decide, right, where we hit the brakes? Let's go the whole hog. And if they are legit people, then they'll get through. And if not, then that's what the Torah wanted. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will mete out the judgment. What was it General Schwarzkopf said? It is not my job to judge these terrorists. God will do that. It is my job to arrange for the meeting. Right. Okay. So Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Tarfon say that this is what they would have done. They would have done Drisha v'Chakira to the max. And Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, hold on. Your chumrah in trying to uphold that is actually a kula in the other side. And we'll see exactly the logic in the Gemara before we finish the perek. Says the Gemara, hold on. Lifnei oto beit din hu di en sotrin. 1 second. You just told me that if a guy runs away, let's look at the Mishnah again. Someone runs away from his ruling. After they ruled, after the gavel came down. If he comes down in front of that Beit Din, we don't reopen the case. Sounds like if he goes to another Beit Din, what do? We do reopen the case. That's what it sounds like. Sotrin. Hatani Sefa, but we learn in the Sefa in the second part of the Mishnah, Kol Makom Sheyamdu Shenaim V'Yomeru Me'idim Anu Et Ish Ploni. Any place where someone says, we saw that this guy was Nigmar Dino Bebet Din Ploni in such and such a court, the din was finished with him. These are the two witnesses. Ploni Uploni are the witnesses. Harez and Nerag. In this case, it doesn't mention in front of that Bet Din, illustrating that if the guy now is in front of another Bet Din,
Could be retried.
it could be no, you still don't retry.
Doesn't matter.
Again,
but
in the first case it says, if the guy comes back to the same Bet Din, we don't retry. Sounding like if you go to another Bet Din, you do retry, right? The Gemara then says, what do you mean? But look at the Sefa. The Sefa says, every case that two Edim walk in with the guy. And they say that the guy had, in this court, he had Nigmar Adin, the court case was finished. What do we do? In the second Bet Din, we don't reopen the case. So you see that the diuk that we made in the Resha is incorrect from the Sefa, okay? Everyone got that? Resha means the beginning. Sefa means end. This is a perfect example. I love that you asked me that question because it gives me the opportunity to say Aramaic is almost always, it's like a bastardized version of Hebrew and one of the local languages. So a lot of the words are going to be almost the same. What word is Resha sound like?
Rosh.
Rosh. Resha is the head. What does Sefa sound like? Sef with an aleph. Sof. Okay? Sefer would be a book. You're right, you'd be right. But Sefa is Sof. So Resha is the head, the beginning. Sefa is the end. By the way, in the Mishnah has multiple cases, then we use a little bit of an interesting terminology. We use an idea called Resha de Resha, the head of the head, that's case 1. Sefa de Resha, case 2. Resha de Sefa, case 3. Sefa de Sefa, case 4. Okay? But thank God we're not dealing with that right now, so we don't have to get confused.
Whiteboard.
Okay, so the Gemara asks, the Sefa seems to contradict what the Resha says. The Resha indicates that if you went to the same court, we don't reconsider. But if you went to another, we'd reopen the case. The Sefer seems to say, no, even if you went into a different court, the halacha would be, once the testimony is on Nigmar Adin, we don't reopen the case. Amar Abaye says, lo kasha, no question. Kan be'eretz Yisrael, kan bechutz la'aretz. In Eretz Yisrael, right, we don't open in the same case, in the same court, but we would judge again in a different court. In chutz la'aretz, right? In chutz la'aretz, in that case, the sentence, the psak would not be reconsidered. Okay?
In Israel, you reopen if it's a new
So
court.
if it's Eretz Israel to Eretz Israel, you don't reconsider. Okay? If you go to another court, Eretz Israel to chutz la'aretz, you would reconsider. So we'll see exactly. Okay? Let's look at the proof of the Gemara. All right? Let's take, and before we do that,
Different court in Eretz Israel, you don't retry.
Eretz Israel, right? Is when you went from Eretz Israel to Eretz Israel.
Different court though.
Different court.
No retrial.
No retrial. Abaye is making the difference, Israel versus Chutz La'aretz. Okay? And then we'll see. Okay. Hold on a second. Let's see the Braita. Because again, like the distinction he's leaving open, and we'll see what he means when he brings the proof from the Braita. The Tanya, the Braita says, Rabbi Yehuda ben Dustai Omer, Mishur Rabbi Shimon ben Shetach, Yehuda ben Dustai says, the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Shetach, Barach me'eretz Israel l'chutz la'aretz, a person ran from Israel to the diaspora. In Sotrini Dino, we do not undo the first ruling. Michutz la'aretz l'eretz Israel, Sotrin Dino, from chutz la'aretz to Israel, we undo the court case, and we start again. Because of the zechut of Eretz Israel. That is fascinating. What does it mean, the zechut of Eretz Israel? Says Rashi, Ulai, look at the first Rashi in the Gemara. Ulai to'il imtzolo petach shel zechut. Maybe the zechut of Israel will allow them to find a zechut. Now, what does that mean? What does it mean, the merit of Israel? Israel has a merit for finding zechuyot.
If it's a Sanhedrin there versus a Betin.
So again, it doesn't say that the zechut is the people there. It just says that the zechut is Eretz Israel. What would that mean? What do you think?
Like the main court, you know?
No, but the distinction is not main versus not main.
Maybe
It's
it's an
Israel versus Chutz La'aretz. Okay?
We value Torah more in our
Oh my gosh. Okay. So he's starting now. He's saying that in Israel they value the Torah more. So what?
So therefore, their judgment and their rule is going to be have more weight than Chutz La'aretz, where we trust.
So remember, fit your words into the Gemara. The Gemara said that maybe the zechut will be that they'll find a way to get him off. That's how Rashi says. That they'll find a loophole to exonerate him. So how would their wisdom, how would the more Torah that they learned help them find a way to exonerate him?
More ways to
They know more of the Torah. Perfect example. Remember Rabbi Yehuda ben Tabai puts the guy to death when there's one ed of the two was zomemd, right? And what did the rabbi tell him, Shimon ben Shetach? You made a mistake. You can't edim zomin only one. So more Torah knowledge created, effectively, a loophole. Now you said in Israel they honor the Torah more. But is that the zechut of Eretz Israel?
Zechut of the people.
Zechut of the people. The answer is that the Gemara tells us about Israel, Avira de Eretz Israel machkim. The air of Israel, it makes you wise. Fascinating. The nature of studying Torah in Israel, it gives a person more than studying not in Israel. People always used to ask, why do they have to have all these yeshivas in Israel? Why can't they have them here? What would they point to? That Gemara. Avira de Eretz Israel, the air of Israel, machkim. So it's true that the scholars were of a sharper variety. Why? Because of zichuta shel Eretz Israel. So the Gemara says, let's review.
Why are we studying Talmud Bavli?
That is an excellent question.
Oh.
That is an excellent question. We'll have to explain that when we finish Bavli. Guys, we finished Bavli. This is the reason why we started. There's many, many reasons. One of the reasons is because the Bavli was written in a more in a better fashion. The Yerushalmi is always much more concise. But actually, the Gemara talks about the advantage that the Bavliim had over the Talmud Yerushalmi for various reasons, okay? Also, all the commentaries are written on Bavli. There's very few commentaries written on Yerushalmi, which meant that the art scroll Yerushalmi was a much harder book to write than the art scroll on the Bavli, as an example, because they were drawing on far fewer sources, okay? So now, Abaye just brought a proof from this Braita. So what did we just learn in the Braita? That Israel has more of a likelihood of getting you off the case, okay? And Abaye said that that's what I was saying. Now let's think back. So what did Abaye mean? How is he explaining the difference between the Resha and the Sefa? In the Resha it says, if you run to another court, we don't reconsider. The Sefa says, if you run to another court, if you run to the same court, we don't reconsider. If you run to another court, we will reconsider. Where is that case? When you ran Chutz La'aretz to Eretz Israel. Okay? The second Mishnah says, even if you go to another court, we won't reconsider. Where's that talking about? When you went from Israel to Israel. Or if you went from Israel to Chutz La'aretz. But not Chutz La'aretz Israel. Why did I tell you to wait, Jonah, until we saw the Braita? Because it's only once you see the Braita that you understand what Abaye means. Abaye's language is actually very misleading. If you just read the answer of Abaye, it's very misleading. Once he brings the proof from the Braita, you understand what Abaye would be telling you. Okay, says the Mishnah, Sanhedrin noheget, you could have a Sanhedrin in Eretz Israel and in Chutz La'aretz. Gemara says, Minahanimili. How do we know this? The Tana Rabbanan, we learned, V'hayu ele lachem lechukat mishpat dorotechem. All of these laws, they should be for you, chukat mishpat, it should be a chok. A chok is a rule, but a rule without understanding the reason. Mishpat is a mitzvah that does have a judgment rule, for all of your generations. Okay? Wherever you are in all your generations. Lamadnu Sanhedrin shenoheget ba'aretz u'b'chutz la'aretz. We know that the Sanhedrin from there, what do we learn from there? That the Sanhedrin applies in Eretz Israel and in Chutz La'aretz, because it says, L'dorotechem. Where in all of your generations, you will have these laws and these elements of justice carried out. Says the Gemara, Imken, ma Talmud lo ma b'sharecha. When the Torah says the words b'sharecha, what does it mean to say? B'sharecha means in your gates. Let's take a look at the pasuk inside, at the bottom left corner of the page on the Zayin Amud Aleph. V'hayu ele lachem lechukat mishpat dorotechem b'chol moshvotechem. Why did I bring you here? Because the Gemara skips, like it often does, the most important part of the pasuk. It was expecting you to be an expert in the Torah. It says clearly that this is going to be for you the justice in all of your generations, which is only about time. Wherever you may live. Wherever you may live includes wherever you may live. Then the Gemara says, well, what do you mean? Doesn't the pasuk say, you should put policemen and judges in every one of your gates? What do you mean your gates? Continue the pasuk. Again, the Gemara skips the end of the pasuk, which is the important part for this conversation. Asher Adonai Elohecha noten lecha lishvatecha. What are we talking about here? The land that God gave you for the tribes. Which land is that? Not New York, Israel. So the Gemara says, what does it mean when it says Bisharecha? Bisharecha ata moshiv batei dinim b'chol pelech upelech u'b'chol ir. The Gemara answers, when does it say you should put policemen and justices and courts in your gates? And that is talking about in Eretz Israel. That's telling you that you have to have a beit din b'chol pelech upelech u'b'chol ir. There needs to be a network of courts. A court for every state, a court for every city, etc., etc. That's what it means, bish'arecha. So in Israel, there needed to be a tremendous amount of batei din. ובחוץ לארץ, אתה מושיב בכל פלך ופלך. In Chutz La'aretz, you only have Supreme Court of the state of New Jersey. You don't have a court in Deal and in Lakewood and in every city. You have it in every province. ואתה מושיב בכל עיר ועיר. You don't have to have in every single city. The Gemara says, Sanhedrin הורגת, the Sanhedrin that kills once every 7 years. Says the Gemara, Okay, Ibaylahu. Okay, Ibaylahu. Now we have one opinion that says every 7 years. The second opinion says every 70 years. Ibaylahu. Achad l'shivim shana nikrat chovlanit. Once every 70 years is called a destroyer, a bruiser, an abusive bedin. Odilma orach arahu. Maybe what he's saying is, how do you know that when he calls it chovlanit, it's saying it's chovlanit? Maybe he's saying the opposite. Now remember, let's look at the Mishnah. The Mishnah says the first opinion says a bedin that kills once every 7 years is destroyer. The second opinion then says, Amar Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, Achat l'shivim shana. He doesn't say what he feels about a bedin that does it once every 70 years. Maybe he's saying the perfect amount is once every 70 years. In which case, by the way, he might not be disagreeing with the Tanakama. You see, the Gemara is now presenting a scenario that you can learn in the Mishnah that they're not arguing. The first guy says once every 7 years is a chovlanit. How about if you did one every 8 years? What would the first guy call you? Destroy. No, once every 8 years. I'm a regular. I'm good. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says once every 70 years. Maybe Rabbi Elazar is telling you it's not that you're a chovlanit once every 7. He's saying, you know what a good amount is? Good amount. Average amount once every 70 years. The Gemara says, Teku, you're right. We don't know what Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says. Maybe he means once every 70 years is a bad thing. Maybe he's saying once every 70 years is acceptable. The difference would be, the way I'm seeing it, once every 71 years. Okay? What would that be? Says the Gemara continues, the Mishnah. Rabbi Tarfon, Rabbi Kiva Umim. They used to say, if we bought this beer on this Sanhedrin, we would have asked multiple questions until they would have contradicted themselves. The Gemara says, what would they have done in order to invalidate the witnesses? The Gemara says, Rabbi Elazar say, Re'itim terefa harag shalem harag. Right? Did you see, when this person killed, did he kill terefa or did he kill a person who was living? How could the guy know? Did you give the guy a physical before you saw that he got killed? Maybe he was a terefa walking. They asked questions that were impossible to answer. Okay? Rav Ashi says, and if you want to say, he added to this. He made a question A, B. A, B, 1A, 1B. And if you want to say Shalem Ava, you want to say he was not a terefa, right? What would he do? Dilma b'makom saif nakave have. Maybe the guy, when he chopped him in the neck, the guy already had in that spot a slice. Maybe the guy was dying already. And when he put the knife there, did you check before the guy chopped his head off that there wasn't already a slice in his neck? They would ask questions that there was no way the guy would be able to see it. Okay? Do you know maybe there was going to be, other opinions learn that he's not saying that there's a mark on the neck already. They're saying maybe the guy had a puncture in his wound, in his lungs, in his kidney, etc. The Gemara continues, what would they have said when they saw somebody committing adultery? So they saw, as we said earlier, they could see the person that he's there, and it's at any point in the act of adultery, that's enough to be killed at any point. The Gemara answers, they said, Ra'item kimikchoba shvoferet. Did you see? Right, and this is an example. Right, they would have to ask if they were able to see of the applicator inserted into the tube. What that means is it's a euphemism of saying, when a person would put the applicator into the thing, into the eyeshadow, so that's a euphemism for the actual act of intimacy. They would ask the witnesses, did you see them in the bed, or did you actually see the actual man's, manhood enter into the place of the womanhood? If they didn't see exactly that, maybe they can't prove it, and that would get them. That would be the way that they would get them.
You said Erva before. Anytime someone sees it, if they go one to the window, one after another, it's good.
So again, that would be where they saw what they saw. If they ask them a question like this, which is not what they would normally ask, but if they asked them a question, they had to admit that they didn't see that could invalidate the witness. Or you get one guy saying yes and one guy saying no, and then again, it's a problem. The Gemara says, so what did they do in such a case? The Rabbanan disagree with Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva. So what did they do in such a case where they didn't see it? Kishmuel, the Gemara says, Kishmuel, Dama Shmuel, b'menafim mishiyera'u kemenafim. In a situation where you see people committing an act of adultery, in order to call them adulterers, you don't need to witness actually the penetration of the person. All you need to witness is them actually in the act of intimacy, and that's good enough. So the rabbis had a lower threshold for what witnessing the act would be. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen. We're just late for mincha.
How would they kill the person?
Want to pray here?
Listen, so maybe we should pray mincha here. What do you want to do? Then if we don't have a minyan, then we need to run up.